Does this sound familiar at all to you? You find yourself dreading and procrastinating on creating your show notes, but you also feel extremely guilty for not doing them well, or maybe even not at all. If so, then this video is for you. You are going to learn how to create show notes quickly and easily in a way that maximizes the reach of your podcast episode. If you're an expert looking for the best advice on how to grow your podcast audience, subscribe to my channel and hit the bell to be notified whenever we post a video. Is Deidre Shen, the CEO and co-founder of Capsho, the world's first AI-powered podcast copywriter. I have been working with experts who podcast who cumulatively have banked over $1.6 million in sales. I mean, I did over $200,000 in just my first year podcasting because I worked out all of these little known secrets. And that's one that I'm going to share with you today. So let's get into exactly the exact show note template to make your podcast easy to find. Okay, so we are back and we are talking show notes. I am joined by my co-founder, Bona Rai.
Hello.
welcome. And okay, so I was just talking about how we didn't realize that show notes was important.
No.
At all, right? We started our podcast and we're like, okay, we're just going to put it out there. And the great thing about how, as humans, when we learn and we grow, we start to stack on other things that can help us do things better.
Yes.
And one of those things was show notes. And it was actually really funny. I was thinking about a conversation that we were having actually in a coaching call. We're part of mastermind. Like, what do they call it?
I was like, have you signed up to Masterclass?
We're part of mastermind.
Yeah.
And it was really funny because someone was asking about how, where can they organically get traffic? And there was someone else who piped up and he was like, well, I'm on YouTube because it's searchable. I know that a lot of people go on podcasts, but they're not searchable. And immediately I was like, hold on a second.
Yeah, that is not true.
That is not true. And that is the importance. That's why show notes are so important, because that is how we make our podcast searchable.
Absolutely.
So with all that said, I actually wanted to use this time to go into the template. Yeah. And you are our expert copywriter in the team, because I'm not going to lie, I hate copy.
I think even copywriters hate copy, but go on, yes.
Which is really why we created Capsho.
That's why. That is exactly why. It's one of those things like vegetables. I mean, I like vegetables actually. Not even a fair analogy. We know we need it, but nobody enjoys it.
Yes. Yeah. So we decided to take all this pain away from you. But for those of you who are like, I don't know if I want a software doing this for me, I don't know if I want AI doing this for you, then, well, this is what we're going to be diving into.
Absolutely.
The template that you should be following to create super effective, super compelling show notes.
Yes.
Okay, so let's get into it. So there are 3 parts to this template. The first part is what we call content honey traps. And if you've been listening along to this podcast so far, then content honey traps, you are no stranger to it. We have been talking about this since the first episode. But a quick recap, the whole purpose of a content honey trap is to create curiosity in your listener so that they're like, I need to listen to this thing. So that's what we want to start off with, right? Yes. We want to start off with that curiosity, compelling someone to be like, you know what, I don't even need to read the rest of these show notes. I'm in.
Let me just hit play.
Yeah, exactly. Now, the trick with show notes, the little extra, oomph that we want to give to our content honey trap is that we need to optimize them for SEO.
Yes.
Okay, again, this is the whole purpose of what show notes are going to do for you. You want to become searchable, which means that first paragraph has to be optimized for SEO.
Yes.
And that first paragraph is where your content honey trap lives.
Yes.
So, take us off, Bono. Kick us off. Kick us off with,
let's take off.
Yeah, with how can someone think through that first paragraph? So I've already laid it out. Content honey traps that are optimized for SEO.
why and what should they be doing?
Yeah, this one is it is a tricky balance to get right. And, it does take a little bit of practice, but I think exactly what you were just talking about, where how do you balance curiosity where, and we've talked in previous episodes about all the different mental models we have, also built into Capsho,
Yes.
but if you aren't using the software yet, really thinking about what is the particular emotion that you're alluding to kind of create that curiosity, that hook. But I think, as you say, the thing with show notes is you also want to take into account the keywords that people are searching for, but not stuff that first paragraph with keywords. So if I take an example, one of our highest performing podcast episodes is around how to come up with a good title. And there's lots of people searching all forms of how to title your episode, name your episode, title your episode, coming up with podcast title ideas. You wouldn't just lump all of that in just for the sake of SEO, but how can you write that first paragraph to say, okay, what are the keywords I'm taking into account, and how do I write it in a way that's going to actually create curiosity, not give away the answer?
Yes.
So because people are searching things like podcast title ideas or episode title, how to come up with episode titles. So it could be something as simple as, have you been struggling with coming up with a podcast episode title, right? And I'm just kind of writing this on the fly. You can go and check our actual content honey trap, but that's conversational and it's a question that hooks people. And then it's like saying, you have to listen to this episode.
Yes.
So it's really about keeping it simple and conversational by way of how people are searching without actually, trying to stuff it all and be searched. The other point I do want to make is, like you said, we've all been through this. When we search something and then you get the results and you very quickly scan what that result is saying from what you've searched, and you click on it and then you can't find that paragraph. I don't know if you've been this, and it's like all the way at the bottom, right? And you give up. So that's why the first paragraph is so important. If someone is searching, I don't know how to title my episode, and they see we come up as a search result for them, and they click on it and it's like one of the first things they see.
Yeah.
We're so impatient, unfortunately, right? But if we don't, we just move on to the next thing. So that's why it's really, really critical to get this right. So that's how you want to think about it. You really want to think about what is like either the pain point or the exact thing that person is thinking about, or it creates a little bit of like, oh, this is something I haven't thought about, and like creates that curiosity and hook. And then you very quickly follow it up with, well, this is going to give you the answer for that exact thing. So being really specific, using keywords, how people are searching them, in that first 1 to 2 sentences that's kind of how you do it.
Yeah.
Doing it, of course, is not the easiest thing, but if you can start there, then it gives you a really good starting point, and you can just try different versions until it really feels like you're getting into the groove of things.
Yes, but hot tip, Capsho.com will do it for you.
Exactly.
Well, it's a no-brainer. Why wouldn't you just...
I do struggle with kind of explaining it sometimes because I'm like, I just get Capsho to do it.
Then you don't even have to remember doing this. Okay,
right.
So, but anyway, put that to the side. That is the first paragraph. That is what you're going to open with in your show notes.
Yes.
Now, after that, just some admin stuff. This is when straight after that first episode, first paragraph of your show notes is when we would recommend that you put your podcast player and links to. Generally, we do Spotify, iTunes, and Google as the sort of 3 probably most popular. I definitely wouldn't put all of them there. That's very overwhelming.
Yeah.
So definitely have a look at your stats and see what players people are actually, what are the major players that people are using, and put those links under the podcast player.
Yes.
And then we get into the second part of the show notes. And this is really actually going to be the bulk of it, I would say.
Yeah.
And it comes down to the story and the learnings. So the story is kind of the thing, and Bonna's going to kind of expand on this, but I just wanted to give a quick overview. The story is what builds that instant relatability with emotion. That's what builds that connection. And then the learnings is almost the logical part of it, right? So if anyone has ever delved into the psychology of online marketing, and you would know that I am a follower of Russell Brunson. He's always talking about hook, story, offer.
Yes.
And then as part of story, it's like emotion, logic, right? When you're trying to sell something, and we're always even on these show notes, we're trying to sell someone to listen to our podcast episode. we have to go emotion, logic, as well as hook, story, offer, which is that's actually the layout of the show note, right? Hook with the content time track.
Yes.
This is now the story part, and then the offer is the third part.
Yes.
But anyway, so I digress. Can you take us off? Why do I keep saying that?
Take
us through.
I feel like you really want us to, you really want me to take you off somewhere. So let me take you off into the world of
story and learnings. Please, yes.
And I don't think it's a digression at all, because you're right. These are all fundamental principles, right? Because we can all get so overwhelmed with like a formula for this and a type, and a template for that. But really, it does come down to how do you hook someone in? How do you build that connection with them? And how do you make them an offer that they can't refuse? I can't do that. I can't do the voice, but I must do the, and because then otherwise, if you've done a really good job of hooking them in and building that relatability and not giving them an opportunity, let's say, to buy from you in some way or buy into you, then that's a wasted effort. So I think that's actually a really good reminder for everyone in terms of just regular copy and marketing 101. But really this, as you say, this particular section is the meatiest. And it is going to be, unless your hook is like so compelling and so specific that this doesn't even matter. This really is this is almost like where the workhorse of your show notes, right? Because chances are, especially if you're using your show notes in the example that you were giving in the early part of this episode, where you might be running cold traffic or Google ads,
yes,
people are going to want to know, even if they're skimming this part, right? They're going to want to know a little bit more to be like, do I give this person 10, 15, 20 minutes of my time? Yeah. So do not skimp on this bit. Like we said, we start with story, and it doesn't have to be long. So when you use Capsho, our story part of the show notes is about a paragraph, just to, as you say, build instant relatability with this person. So even as I'm listening to your episodes, when you do the Grow My Podcast show, there's always like a story that you're telling, right? Yeah. It instantly creates, and I know you very well, and even some of these stories I haven't heard before, I'm like, oh, okay, it's not just about liking you in this case and whoever's listening, you as a person. It's more about relatability, that this person knows what they're talking about, which is credibility, but also like this person knows what I feel and what I've been through,
which has gone through it.
Exactly, yeah. which is relatability, right? So that's actually what adds to the credibility. It's not just you saying, hey, I'm the host of this show. I'm the host of the show because these are some real anecdotes that I can tell, having been through this. I've been through this, or I'm going through this, and I'm sharing it with you. So that's the point of the story. Yeah. And we don't want to have it to be too long-winded, because people may not understand the point of it. That's why it's a short, sharp one that you can tell to illustrate the point. And a lot of us make decisions off of emotion, as we know. Actually, yes, everyone does. But sometimes you just need that extra kicker, which is where the learnings comes in, because our psychology goes, okay, my emotion has been activated and I feel a sense of connection with this person. I'm already hooked, which is why I'm reading this, and I feel relatability. And then we just need some people need the extra logical, let's say, chaser. Like, yes, when you're having a drink and you have a chaser, to say, okay, and this is what you're going to learn. Again, short, sharp, to the point. We recommend either doing this is the main thing you're going to learn, which is like one main thing that people can latch onto and say, yeah, I really need to learn how to do that, or I didn't know that was even a thing, I need to know that. Or if the topic lends itself more to like smaller bite-sized pieces, then 3, because our brain loves thinking in threes.
Yes.
So these are the 3 things you're going to get from this episode. People go, okay, 15 minutes of my time. Even if one of those 3 things works, it's been worth my time.
Yes.
Right. So now at this point, you've got someone who's hooked and is very curious. They've got a relatability with you from the story, and this person not only seems to know what they're talking about, they seem to understand my exact position on this issue. And as a reinforcer, if nothing else, I'm going to learn this one thing or these 3 things from this episode. Let me check it out. So yes, that's the point of that particular section. And this is also where, if you do have a guest, is a great place to put your guest bio as well. And this goes back to SEO, but if people are searching this person, it really it makes them come up. I've done that numerous times with some of the guests you've had on your other podcasts, just to see what else they've done, what other, and a lot of other podcast episode show notes come up. And I said, oh wow, this person has done this too. Let me bring that into our show notes for this person.
Yes.
So we want to make sure that your guest bio is in there as well. It also adds additional credibility and makes sure that you are showing up for when people are looking for them as well.
Yes. Wow. Okay. So it's jam-packed with value. All right. So then we get to the third part of our show notes. And this is really the call to action, right? Like, again, anyone listening to this is the great thing about show notes when we're not capped by just the description is that we can kind of like go as long as we want in a way. Now, we don't want to be going on and on and on, but we do have more space. We do have more real estate. And we can lay it out in a way where it makes logical sense for our listener and our audience to actually want to follow it through.
Yes.
And we want them to be following it through because we want them to get to the call to action. And the important thing about this part, which I do not want anyone to miss, is that the call to action should not just be rate and review and etc. Like, you need to be very specific about getting people onto your list, right? Everyone who's listening to this should be an expert. You happen to have a podcast that you're trying to grow, but the whole purpose of that podcast is to actually build your email list and get the people on your email list to your conversion event, right? That's why we're in business. Like, you need to be using your podcast as a lead gen machine.
Yes.
And this is going to be a key part of it. So this last bit is really about putting in a call to action that is specifically and deliberately a lead magnet that gets them onto your list.
Yes. Could not stress this enough, because sometimes I think we, and we're all experts, obviously, who's ever listened to this podcast, you want to add value and you want to build community, and that's a really great thing. But sometimes I think we either forget or we shy away from this part of the process, which is like, hey, actually, either buy this thing or buy into me, basically, right? Where it's like, oh, I'm just here to give value. So because you've done all this hard work, so we were just talking about build this momentum of, I've hooked you in, even if you're completely cold. I've built a connection with you. I've shared myself, and I've shared the learnings that you're going to get from this. I've created this entire podcast content for you for free.
Yes.
And I'm even now thinking about this offer that's going to be even more valuable to you, right? So like you said, a lead magnet, if you're doing it right, is going to be based on even more value for this person. So an example for us is in the podcast episode, we're talking about how to basically the strategy for titling your podcast episode, using the same example I've been using. And hey, the lead magnet is going to be, I know that's a lot, and you don't want to keep on remembering and coming back to the podcast episode. So we've done the hard work for you and put it into a checklist that you can just have on your desktop, wherever you're doing it next. So you can just tick it off every time you're using it. That's value, right? For our person who cares about this. So we've done that work. So why would you not? So it's really, that's very much about the call to action. We want to reframe it as the offer that we were talking about, an offer to join your world. And the other thing that's really important in show notes is that it's in the moment. That's the thing, as people are reading it, or even if, like I said, they're skimming the value and the story and they're going, yep, okay, this person seems legit, bam, you hit them with like, they're thinking about this right now. Actually, yes, it would be great for me to have a cheat sheet. Maybe I'll even listen to the episode a little bit later, but let me just make sure I don't miss this opportunity because I know I'll forget. So that's really what you want to do it in context, because if you think about, if you had to run ads to this thing, right, you have to create the moment, again with this person, you've already created a moment for them. It's such a shame to not ask them out.
Yes, exactly. Why would you have this? Yeah, all the time, every time. Okay, maybe
with
not.
Everyone.
Yeah, maybe not. Maybe don't take it that far. But okay, so we have, wow. Okay, so you can literally go to our show notes and do a few things to make this so easy for you. You can hack our show notes so you can see exactly, because we eat our own dog food. Capsho has written our show notes for us. So the first thing is you can go over to our show notes right now and see, even as we're talking, how we've actually laid out each of these three parts to the show notes. You could just sign up for Capsho and let it do it for you. Let it do it for you, right? That's the second thing that you could be doing to make this so simple. And the third thing is that you can go and get our cheat sheet. See what I did there? Go and get our cheat sheet, because we have made it super simple for you to not have to remember what the three parts of really compelling show notes are. We've done the hard work for you. You just have to get it, right? So there you go. Three super easy ways that we've made that we've just handed over to you on how you can do show notes super easy. Okay, now let me just really quickly summarize. So there are three main parts to creating your show notes. The first part, the very first paragraph that you want to hit your audience with is the content honey traps that is optimized for SEO. That's the first part. The second part, we then want to go into the story and the learnings, because this is what starts to create the connection. You've hooked them in already with that first paragraph, and now you want to create that credibility and relatability, really tap into their emotions, and then follow that up with the logic. So what is it that they're going to learn? What are they going to get out of this episode? And then the third part is all about the offer. I put that in inverted commas, but really this is your call to action. This is the offer that you're going to provide them to have them join your world, join your community. So those are the three super important parts.
Comments if you learned something new from this video, and if you want to hear the full story behind how I stumbled upon this particular little known secret, then listen to episode 11 of the Grow My Podcast show. We'll leave a link for that below. This video out if you want to learn how to use your episode content to hook your listener in and have them binge listening to your podcast. And this one down here if you want to learn why just repurposing your podcast content is an immediate ROI killer and what to do instead.